When I was 19 years old, I wasn't living in an apartment. I wasn't renting a room. And I wasn't even sleeping on a friend's couch. I was living in an active office building. And every day when the last employee left and the hallway lights clicked off, I would unroll a thin futon mattress in the middle of a floor that was never meant for living. Above me were flickering fluorescent lights. They looked like they were barely holding on. Across from me was a landline that flashed every few seconds. And when people would ask me, "So, where do you live?" I'd say, "Downtown," hoping that they wouldn't ask where downtown. And when they did, I'd say, "In an office building, ba-dum-bum." And they would laugh and say, "Oh, you must work a lot." And I'd say, "You have no idea." Because if I would have worked there, it quite literally would have been the world's shortest commute. But I didn't. I didn't own a room. I didn't own a house. And most days, I didn't feel like I owned a future. Until one night, staring up at those flickering fluorescent lights, a quiet truth rose up inside of me. Just because you're surviving in a place that was never meant for you doesn't mean you have to build your future around it. And in that moment, an idea was planted, an idea that I'm here to share with all of you today. The most valuable real estate that you will ever own is a space inside your mind, your mental real estate. Change your internal address and your external address will change too. Psychologists call this your cognitive map. It is the internal blueprint that tells you who you are, what you deserve, and what's possible for you. However, many of us have been living in maps that we didn't draw. Maps shaped by our childhood, by trauma, by culture, and by systems that were never designed with us in mind. Inside of those maps is what I call your cognitive address. And if we are honest, some of us have been living in scarcity state of mind. Others on comparison court. And some of us have been circling for years imposter syndrome square, not enough boulevard, and almost avenue. So let me ask you, if you had to name where you've been living mentally, what would you call it? Because most of us, we're not afraid to show people where we've been living physically. We are afraid to show people where we've been living mentally. So we've been unpacking these emotional boxes in these internal neighborhoods, even the ones labeled pain I never asked for, because it feels familiar. But neuroscience teaches us something, that our brains can rewire itself based on what we think, practice, and experience. This is called neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to create new neural pathways, new neighborhoods, and a new sense of home inside yourself. And I saw this time and time again as I coached aspiring homebuyers. Many might have been stopped by external factors, but even more were stopped by internal ones. Their growing mental debt, the belief that their dreams were already pre-declined. And so I thought, what if you could create something that could keep score? Something like a credit check, right? A mental credit check. And so that way, you can measure how your mind is keeping score. One woman looked at her score and said, Nicole, I had no idea that I had been pre-declining my dreams for years. Her transformation and so many others became the foundation for my book, Own Your Space. Because once you understand your cognitive map, then you can finally see the road that leads you home. But for me, understanding that map wasn't enough. I had to learn something else. There's a saying that you might have heard of, faith without work is dead. And transformation taught me this. While you're doing the rewiring, the unpacking, the becoming, sometimes you have to rent until you own. And I call that place Faith Street. Sometimes you have to rent on faith until you own it. And let me tell you, faith doesn't come with guarantees, but it does come with momentum. And when I committed to living on Faith Street, everything around me changed and something miraculous happened. I started getting invited into places I never felt qualified for. Spaces that I never believed I belonged in. Spaces I'd only seen in magazines. I got invited to a $100 million home. A home that was so large, it quite literally had its own zip code. But what surprised me most wasn't the square footage. It was a woman who owned it. She said that she struggled with the same things I did, feeling unworthy of the spaces she occupied. She used to be afraid to show people where she lived too. And so I joked and said, girl, if I lived in all of this, I wouldn't want people to know where I lived either. But she didn't mean physically. She meant mentally. And then she handed me a book, a pattern language, a book about how architects design to support the human spirit. Architect Christopher Alexander did research to show how curved walls calm the nervous system, how archways invite safety, and how light encourages belonging. And then I thought, what if we designed our minds the same way architects design beautiful homes? What if we softened the hard edges of shame? What if we expanded the doorway between who we were and who we're becoming? What if we opened up the windows of our mind to let more light in? Because here's the truth. 46 million Americans are currently renting their homes. Globally, 1.2 billion people are renting. But even more people are renting their confidence, their identity, their belonging, their worth. And the next housing crisis will not be about affordability. It will be about belonging. Because you can't move into a life you don't feel like you belong in. People ask me all the time, so hold up, how did you move from living in an office building to speaking on global stages? And the answer is actually pretty simple. Before I held a mic, I had to hold possibility. Before I owned a home or owned the stage, I had to own a new identity. And that's why standing here in the Philippines as a Black and Filipina American isn't just a milestone. It's a homecoming. It's a reconciliation from the girl who used to sleep under flickering fluorescent lights to the woman who's redesigning entire neighborhoods inside her mind. And I want to leave you with this housewarming gift, now that you're coming home to yourself and all. You might be staying up late at night and thinking, why do my dreams feel delayed? And today I'll give you an answer. What or where have you been living? Because quite possibly you could be living at an old address. And the answer is to name it. Once you name that address, you can change it. Because one day, somebody's gonna go up to you and say, so where are you living these days? You wanna be able to say, I used to live in scarcity, but I don't live there anymore. I live in a new address. I now own a much better state of mind, because the most valuable real estate that you'll ever own is a space inside your mind. Maraming salamat po.